So hey guys, Andrew Dobie here. Welcome to episode 25 of Just a Chat With. It's now officially season 3. How did that happen? Just a few quick updates before we get started though. We have a new intro, so we hope you like that. Let us know what you think. We also have our first sponsor, which is really exciting. So welcome aboard the One Club for Creativity, which is the world's foremost non-profit organisation recognising creative excellence in advertising design. If you remember back to episode 21, we actually had their CEO on the podcast, Kevin Swanepoel. So go and have a listen if you haven't checked that out already. You can also head to theoneclub.org if you want to learn more about them. If this is your first listen though, as well as being a host here on the podcast, I'm also the CEO and founder of Made Brave, a global strategic brand agency. And our team worked really hard in the background to pull all of these episodes together. So I just want to give a big shout out to Keenan Irwin, our brand manager, and Ben Nielsen, our designer, who are working hard every month to pull and produce the show together for us. Now that we're on to season 3 though, we had a little bit of a chat internally of like, why do we do this? Why have we got this show? We've had some amazing guests, as I hope you'll agree. And we've got some amazing guests coming up in season 3. It's been really fun, but a little bit, I suppose, deeper than that. I remember what it was like when I was younger, trying to find my way in my creative career. And, I suppose we want to use this as a platform to inspire creativity and kind of help everyone who's listening to figure out your way forward on your creative journey. So we've added this little line into the intro where we're saying that we're here to inspire creativity and bravery in you. And I suppose what we mean by that is that, I want this podcast to be something that inspires something in you, to maybe try something a little bit more brave than you've done, or add something positive to your life. I think the internet can be full of some negativity, and I'm keen to balance it out with positivity. So this is my way of putting a little bit of positive energy back into the internet in the hope that it balances out somehow. But if it's you and the podcast has had some sort of positive impact on you, if it's helped you change something, a direction in your life, or just tweak something ever so much, we'd love to hear about it. So please let us know if something positive has happened because of the show. Now, at the end of season 2, we sat down with Andy Nairn, who is the founding partner of Lucky Generals, which is an agency with offices in London and New York, whose work I really, really admire. With nearly 30 years experience in the creative industry, Andy has been named as the UK's top brand strategist for the last 2 years in a row, and one of the top 5 creative people in the world of advertising, according to Business Insider. And he also published his first book, Go Luck Yourself, which is currently on pre-orders. It might now be live now that when this has been published. Go and check that out. Go Luck Yourself by Andy Nairn. We had an amazing time with Andy, so go check that out if you haven't already. Before now, we had amazing people on the podcast, like founder of Fantasy Interactive, David Martin. We had Design Matters podcast host, Debbie Millman, and branding legend and author of the Brand Gap, I nearly forgot it there, sorry Marty Newmeyer, and many, many more. We've also had several very exciting people coming up, as I mentioned. Look out for the upcoming episodes and make sure you're subscribed. In this episode, though, today I sat down with the wonderful Ashwin Chacko, who is an illustrator and designer based out of Dublin. Ashwin is a delight to talk to. He is full of positive energy and vibes. So it was an absolute treat to sit down with him. And he is just a lovely man who knows where he's headed in life and knows where his value is to bring to the world. So he has some great stories. He tells us of his childhood and where his inspiration has come from and how he's found his style and his why and purpose in the world. So I hope you enjoy the show. Thanks. So, hey everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of Just a Chat With. I'm Andrew Dobie. Today, I am very excited as we are here with none other than the amazing Ashwin Chacko, who is a multi-disciplinary illustrator, designer, and hand letterer, and motivational speaker living and working out of Dublin, Ireland. Working for 12 years now as a solo entrepreneur, Ashwin has worked with clients such as Facebook, Adobe, Nike, Puma, United Nations, and a whole host more. Ashwin specializes in positive visual storytelling, helping businesses to connect with their audiences through illustration, design for advertising campaigns, for products, packaging, editorials, even children's books, and one-off commissions from all over the world. With a passion for uncovering the social interactions that drive culture, Ashwin captures these moments in bold lines and shapes, focusing on a strong use of characters intermingled with typography and patterns. Ashwin describes his work as positively playful, influenced by contemporary culture rooted in his love for music, comics, tattoos, and street art. Ashwin also published several illustrative books, many of them for children, as I mentioned. One called Keep At It, which is full of inspiring quotes and insights that Ashwin himself wishes he had at the beginning of his journey. So if you're just starting out, or even if you've been going for a long time, go check that out. And also if you have kids, there are loads of other books, and they're all brilliant. They're all on my wish list now, and I'm going to be picking my way through them for my very own son over the next week while. Growing up in international boarding school at the foothills of the Himalayas in India, Ashwin says this has had a huge influence on his work over the years. He now lives with his wife, who is Irish, which prompted him to move to Ireland, where they live with their 3 children. Ashwin, thanks so much for being here. Pleasure to have you. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me onto your podcast/videocast.
Yeah, I know it's a mix of both. So if you are listening, you can also watch this on YouTube or on Facebook or Instagram as well. Ashwin, I've actually been very excited about you coming on. I've been really, since I found you and came across your Instagram, I've been really inspired, because sometimes when I'm having a bad day, the bad day just seems to keep going. And then I jump onto Instagram and your face pops up and you boost some positive energy into my arm. So I first of all want to say thank you. It's really nice. I really like the kind of vibe of your, what you're putting out into the world. How are things with you just now in terms of work, in terms of the pandemic? How's that been affecting you?
So for a lot of people, the pandemic has been quite tough. But for me personally, I think it's been a revelation, because at the start of the pandemic last year, I just finished my residency with Facebook. And so I had this moment where the whole world was paused. And that gave me the time to just sit down and consider, why do I do what I do? And what do I want to get out of it? It's that that crux moment, the crossroads where you're like, I've been working on autopilot almost, Yeah. And so what direction should I take things? And when I came to that space, by taking that time to internalize what was going on within and to work out my goals and what I wanted to get out of my work, I came to the conclusion that I wanted to talk about bringing joy and bringing positive and encouraging things into the world. That's my end goal. That's my why. And so by combining who I am and my why, or my voice, I created this new style, or the style is the combination or the bridge between those two factors. And since I've done that, there's been this upkick of work that's turned up, because I suppose everybody was in this similar place of, everybody's tired of bad news. And finally, there's a little bit of positivity popping into their space. And so I suppose that worked into my favor in that sense. And I think overall, with the industry shifting to a more remote way of working, they've been a lot more open to work with people who don't work at their offices, freelancers and solopreneurs. The mindset has completely switched because now everybody's doing that. So I think that's one positive thing that's come out of this place of COVID.
Yeah, well, that definitely comes across, and I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into that, because I remember as a young creative, you're trying to find your stamp in the world. You're trying to figure out, you kind of know you need to have a style, or you need to have a thing. And I remember in my early 20s going, I don't have a thing. What's my thing? And you're kind of trying to figure out your identity as a creative person. And mine came when I finally founded Made Brave, and I almost felt like, oh well, I've got a vehicle now to kind of put my energy, my creative energy into, and kind of bring that to the world. And like you, I very much enjoy putting positivity into the world and kind of using. I think, if I could have my feed with only Ashwin, I would now have my feed with only Ashwin, because those, you bring those little bits of joy. And I think what's really nice, and you touched on it there, is that you've not just found an illustrative style, because some people could stop there and that illustrative style could go anywhere. What you've done is you've married it up with an attitude, with a way of life, and helping people see positivity and bringing joy. Could you talk a little bit more about how you first of all, how did you form the visual style? How did you settle on this positivity, and then what, kind of over what period has this kind of come together and felt like that kind of aha moment?
Right. Well, like most artists and illustrators, I've spent the last decade trying to find this ever elusive, nebulous thing called style, because I never understood why, or how to quantify those facts. But this time of contemplation during COVID, what it allowed me to do is start to assess who I am. So who am I outside of my work? Because this is a really important point. A lot of creatives tie themselves so tightly with their work, and they see their value purely in their work. Whereas we need to see ourselves as individuals first, and we are valuable, and then our work is just a byproduct of that value that we already have. So when you start analyzing yourself in that way and start looking at who you are and what is your identity. For myself personally, I am a Christian and I believe in Jesus Christ. And for me, that's what embodies my ability to be joyful, because joy is not circumstantial. It comes bubbling out of you. It's not like happiness. So happiness is like something happens, so I'm happy. Whereas joy can be a continuous way of life. And so when I had that realization, okay, that is the core of who I am and my identity, and I'm secure in that fact, then I was like, okay, what better thing to do than to share that, Joy bubbles out. It's the voice comes forward. And for me, because I'm a visual artist, I'm like, okay, now how do I express that visually?
Use your language. This is Yeah.
And so with this specific style, it's just an amalgamation of lots of different skills that I've already got. I've really enjoyed the process of screen printing. And that's why I started making more block shapes with my art, because screen printing does better with solid forms and it can be applied much easier. And then the colors, I think, were very subconscious for me, because I come from India, which is very vibrant and wild and chaotic, and it's full of colors. Coming to somewhere like Ireland, where it's primarily green and it's beautiful in that sense, but like it's missing all the yellows and oranges and reds that you'd find in India, I suppose. So I think it was not something I consciously thought about, but it was a way of bringing home into my work, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think there's a nice underlying message there as well, that we often talk about with our team, that the best creativity comes from a sort of diverse look at the world in different ways and different experiences. And often you've managed to take that learning and that insight and that experience from India, and you've also brought in, your experience in Ireland, and it's the mixing pot of all of these things, isn't it? It's not just, and I think often as a creative, you put yourself under pressure I've got to get to my style, but sometimes it takes a while to find all the ingredients to the mixing pot. I suppose that this has now led you into, and we touched on it earlier, your kind of your book we mentioned earlier. Can you tell us a little bit more about the books, how they came about, and just talk a little bit more about those?
Sure. So the book Keep At It was the first one that I self-published in 2019, in Jan of 2019. Mm-hmm. And it actually started off as a side project, as a typography side project for myself. Mm-hmm. I was really interested in learning more about typography and, hand lettering, mm-hmm. more than pure typography. And I wanted to explore that talent. So I gave myself a 30-day challenge where every day I would create one typographical quote that would go mm-hmm. onto my Instagram feed. And through that process, as I picked the quotes, again, unconsciously, and as I finished the project, what I realized was most of the quotes had to do with my own interaction with the creative world and mm-hmm. the learnings I've had through that process as a freelance creative, as a solopreneur. And when I structured all those illustrative quotes that I've done and put a little writing beside it, I thought it made for a good journey for any young creative to learn. These are things that I need to think about before I make that jump to freelance, because you have to consider quite a few things. You're no longer dependent on the salary. You have to think about saving up. You have to think about the fact that you're now a business technically. So you're marketing, you're accountant, you're like all these different roles in one. Yeah. Whereas for us, most artists, we just think of ourselves as artists, and the business side is not there. And so this was a way for me to just put a little bit of that so they begin to start reflecting about it.
Yeah.
There's also just a way to encourage people along their journey, because I think often as we're going through this process and there's nothing happening, you just want to give up because it feels like it's going nowhere. So just having somebody say, no, you're doing a good job, keep at it, and that's where the title came from.
Yeah.
So
I really love it. And I suppose then touching on, kind of lessons you've learned, going freelance. Can you talk a little bit through that journey of kind of what made you decide to do that and kind of what it looked like and what maybe some of the lessons you've learned, good or bad?
Yeah, sure. So I actually started freelancing in my first year of uni. So I was studying animation and multimedia, and actually maybe it was the second year. It was the year 2019, and I started freelancing straight away. I got these small jobs to do illustrative work, some posters here and there, and I liked the fact that I could make a little bit on the side. And so that's just something that continued for me throughout my career. Even when I joined studios, it was a way for me to choose the projects I wanted to work on versus having to, work with client work, which sometimes wasn't very creative, let's say. And so this was a way to actually just hone in on like what I enjoyed doing and pick the projects that were good for me. When I came to Ireland, I initially joined a studio and I was working as an art director. After my period there, I was looking for work and I couldn't find a studio where which was open. I think also Ireland, like India, it very much works on a reference basis. Being a new person turning up in a new city, it's hard to get in the door unless people start to know you.
Sure.
And so I think at that stage, my only option was to freelance. And once I did, I started meeting lots of people and started building that traction over time. So some of the lessons I've learned is to be clear about your vision. Start with vision first,
Yeah.
because if you understand your why, it will clarify your journey even when things get tough. Whereas if you don't have a why, what happens is as soon as there's something rough or like chaotic, the tendency is, okay, let's just quit. I can just get a job at whatever retail store there is. I'm sure McDonald's is hiring, and I'll get by. But like that comes at a cost.
Yeah.
The cost of time, of creativity. It slowly runs you down. And if anything, COVID has taught us that the safe job isn't really safe. The amount of people who went through a space where they lost their jobs because suddenly, their so-called safe job that they worked at was no longer viable.
Yeah.
Whereas a freelancer, you have dips, you have ups and downs throughout the year. You might have 1 month of feast, and then there's famine the next 2 months. So you're always having contingency plans. There's a little nest egg put away for this in case this happens. And then the other thing is always have multiple streams of income. One client's not working. Okay, I've got that guy. I've got this product that I'm selling, and I'm doing multiple things in order to maintain a steady stream of income.
Yeah. And I suppose for someone listening who says, well, how do I find my why? How do I find my purpose? Have you got any tips or help with that?
Do I have any tips?
While you're thinking, there's a great book for those who don't know. If you don't follow Simon Sinek, he has Find Your Why, which is a great book. And we often, we at Made Brave, we also believe in kind of purpose and finding that kind of authentic truth that kind of is your guiding light, if you like. But yeah, I suppose I'm just interested to kind of how you unearth that, how you if there's any pearls of wisdom from you, Ashwin.
I suppose a good way to start is, creating lists is a great way to do that. So one circle is the things that you're good at. So what are your skills? Next circle is, what is your personality like? So what are you known for? What do you think about yourself? And then next circle is maybe, what are you passionate about? And make another circle that is about what you think can earn you money. And I suppose the intersection of all of those will create your why. So it's your personality mixed with your purpose, mixed with your passion. And then there was one more, what impact do you want to make on the world? And when you hone all of these together into that central point, that's where you'll find your why. And I suppose it's really handy to do this with somebody you trust, but not necessarily a family member, because they might be too close to the situation, just like you. The tendency is, when we're looking at ourselves, often we don't see our own superpowers because we're like, everybody can do that, but it takes an outside perspective to see, actually, that's something very special about you. Only you could bring that unique perspective to this position. And if you can do that with someone who knows how to actively listen and pick up those points, they'll help you hone in that process.
Yeah, I love that. I like the, you can't see your own superpower. You need someone else to point at the magic, don't you? And I think we sometimes feel that you've got to be the loudest person in the room or the biggest person, but it's not often that. Sometimes it's the quietest person, and the combination of that quiet and the skill set or the something else that you bring to the world. It's not always the obvious, and sometimes we can't see those things in ourselves. I think that's lovely. Going back a little bit in time, Ashwin, you grew up in an international boarding school, and you've mentioned that this kind of influenced your work quite a lot. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so when I was 9 years old, I went to an international boarding school called Woodstock. and I was there till I graduated. My parents are actually missionary doctors, or my dad's a missionary doctor, and so we moved around a lot when I was younger, until I was about 5 or 6, and then at the age of 9, I went to Woodstock. So the cool thing about Woodstock is it's a little melting pot. It was originally started for missionaries by the British while they ruled India, and Woodstock was the remnant, one of those remnants that was left behind. And obviously there was a lot of missionaries there still. So the nice thing about Woodstock is because it's a melting pot, there was like about 50 different nationalities in my class alone.
Wow.
And it basically, I grew up as a third culture kid because there was a very specific culture within Woodstock that encouraged, learning these different cultures and incorporating little bits and pieces. And so you have a much more global mindset about you. You're much more accepting to different cultures because you have to live with them. You're in a room with 4 or 5 different people from various backgrounds. So you learn empathy. You learn how to collaborate. You learn how to relate. Find that common ground. And I suppose for me personally, that's affected my work because now wherever I go, I know how to find that common ground.
Yeah.
And though I might not feel like I'm completely part of any culture, I can still blend in with any culture.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really really powerful and a great thing to have from such a young age, isn't it? To kind of that acceptance of everyone, no matter where they've come from, and that understanding and empathy, and being able to see multi sides of a coin, isn't it? Because and I think we mentioned it earlier, but there's definitely something that comes. Creativity comes in a much stronger way when we have a mixing pot of minds, of experiences, of ages, of everything. And I think that, it certainly comes across in your work. And I love that. Now, I have a couple of questions from some of our design team who are they're all fanboying and fangirling over your work. So they're very excited to have you on today. So first question here is from Emma Stewart, who's one of our designers. And she asks if you've created any murals from your work.
So I did 1 or 2 small ones when I was in India, but that's something I would really love to do. So anybody who's looking for a mural, hit me up.
There we go. So anyone listening,
I would love to. I think my work would be very conducive to that format, or even working with somebody who is a muralist to bring that vision to life.
Well, we have plenty of spare walls in the Made Brave studio, so we could maybe hook up a conversation up later on. She also asks, whose style do you admire? Do you take your influence from anyone, or is there anyone that you just you're a huge fan of?
Yeah, I take my inspiration from lots of different sources, but I suppose I really love the work of Steve Harrington. I don't know if you're aware of him, but
no.
He also has a graphic background. He runs a studio, but he's also a prolific artist. He's very much known in the hypebeast circles. He's done collaborations with Nike and the likes, but he has this character called Mellow that goes across all his work. And I suppose to me, he showed me that consistency. It's almost like his artwork is a brand, and I learned from that prospect.
Fantastic. Well, this next question is from Jade McFarlane, who's our UX lead at Made Brave, and she asks, or she says, on your YouTube channel, you have to cover a lot of subjects that many creatives and introverts struggle with, such as creative confidence, ways to stay motivated, how to find your style. Which of these videos do you really wish your 20-year-old self would have seen? We assume them all, that all of them, that we'd like to see all of them, but in particular, is there any that you would like to have given as a gift to yourself in your early years?
I suppose creative confidence would have been one of them. I grew up quite an introverted child. I struggled to relate to other people, and that's why I dived into books and art, and as a way to express myself. I think I've become very comfortable with myself now, and that's what comes across. But that was a process of learning and growing and pushing myself to be brave, as it were.
I like it.
My teachers encouraged me to take part in drama, and so I did acting in school, and that helps, because sometimes you're personifying a character, right? So you can become the character. So if the character's confidence, then you exude confidence as well. And then if you do that enough, it becomes a reality, because what you believe about yourself is what the outcome of your behavior, what you say, and what you do.
Yeah, I love
So
that.
it really comes down to belief.
Yeah, no, I love that, Ashwin. Another question from Jade was your book, What Wondrous Shapes We Are, being inspired and a very personal to your wife, Becky, with her experience of anorexia and bulimia and your own experience with race, normalizing body positivity in such a brave way. That book, and being able to work on such I suppose, a personal project must have been really amazing and cathartic in a sense to work on together. Jade's question is, do you have any future plans to work on any projects together, much like this? Is there anything else that you're working on together?
Yeah, so what Becky's done so kindly for me is she started to bring those characters from the book to life. So
Fantastic. For
those of
those
you who
who are not watching and who are listening, do you want to describe what you have in your hands, Ashwin?
So I have some of the characters from the book. So this is Sunny. They're plush toy characters, I suppose. That's what you'd call them. There's Sir Love a Lot. That's what I want to call him, Sir Love a Lot. And this was going to be the Patrick's edition.
Love it.
But yeah, we're still working out the kinks on how best to release it and all of that.
Yeah. Okay. And if anyone's looking for these books, where can they find them? I mean, we can of course pop the links below. But do you want to give a shout out to where we can find your books, your prints, your merchandise?
Yeah, just head over to whackocharko.com and you'll find it in my store.
Fantastic. So yeah. How early in your career did you start to kind of experiment with animation? Does that change the way you now approach your illustration or ideas, or kind of what came first?
So I actually studied animation and multimedia in university. I thought that was the direction I was going to go, but when I actually studied animation, I found the process a bit tedious. I was always more interested in the idea or the story more than the actual output. So, having to draw like 100 drawings just for a minute or less, or a few seconds actually, did not sound appealing to me unless I could get into the pre-production side where I could actually help create the characters, help write the story, and that would have been much more interesting to me. And so from there, I went into comic books, and I created a whole bunch of comic books during my my degree. Those were all my final projects. And I suppose from there it went into graphic design because in India there isn't really illustration isn't seen as a job. It's a hobby at most, and I think there's a lack of understanding of what an illustrator really does and the value that they bring to any project that they're approached. Often the only way to get it in is if you're a graphic designer who does illustration and you just sneak it into the work that you're doing. So yeah, graphic design was the way for me to move forward and be able to continue to do creative work. And of course, the timelines are much shorter versus an animation production, which could go on for a couple of years, So you could do a project and then you move on to the next project and the next project.
Yeah.
So I like that process.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Now, there's a new question we are popping into these podcasts, and it's, what is the bravest thing that you have ever done? And I'm just wondering if there's something that comes to mind for you in terms of the bravest thing you've ever done to inspire our listeners.
I suppose I might have already answered that with facing my inner self, my inner introvert, and overcoming that fact. I'm still not comfortable in large crowds, but it's teaching yourself, these are all limitations that are within your head. And if you learn to see past them, and if you put your mind to anything, you can achieve it. It takes time, and it takes dedication, and it takes the ability to look at your fear in the face and say, no, I will not succumb to this.
No, it's fantastic. Fantastic. And yeah, I suppose now, as I mentioned, we have a lot of younger creatives who listen to the show. And yeah, is there any kind of sort of leaving thoughts for them? It's obviously a challenging world right now to find your way into work, especially if you're trying to figure out who you are and, your style and everything else. Is there anything that you can kind of pass down in terms of just some focus on kind of what you wish you'd known when you got really started early?
Yeah. So I suppose when I got started, the big thing is you want to do everything and anything, right? As a creative, that's the draw, because like if I just do one thing, if I'm just known for this one specific area, then I'm boxed out and I'll get bored of what I'm doing. But what I would really encourage young creatives to do is to look for that niche, look for that specific area that you want to become an expert, That's not to say you can't generalize behind that. Learn all those skills, but be known for one thing. What that will do is it'll open a lot more doors for you. It'll position you in a place where your value is a lot higher versus somebody who does a little bit of everything. And I can promise you this, even though it feels like a box, once you go in through that corridor, choose that door, that niche you want to go into, there's an endless amount of doors within that area.
Yeah. Each small niche is big enough now, isn't it? Exactly. Yeah. And so, Ashwin, what's next for you? What can we expect? What's coming next in the next year or so?
So right after I finished What Wonder Shapes, I've been working on the next book, which is Everybody Has Fear, and I wanted to address that fact. With COVID, a lot of our kids are in this space where they might feel fear, but when we as adults are in that space as well, or in this environment, maybe we're not so aware of that. And we don't know how to express it to our kids, and our kids don't know how to express that fact to us. And so I wrote this book, Everybody Has Fear, and it's a fun, quirky little book that'll open up space for that conversation, So it touches on these different funny fears, like I can't think of the top of my head, but like being afraid of honey and dairy, that's a real fear apparently. So like there's all these like quirky little fears that you could look at, and I've put them out in the book. I'm currently looking at trying to get it published by an actual publisher. So I'm looking around, but if that doesn't pan out, I'll be self-publishing it like the first book.
Yeah, there's all sorts of strange little fears out there. I've got a friend that's scared of buttons on a shirt, So he everywhere he goes he wears zips, and he said to me one day, he said, Andrew, no, I'm really, really, really scared of buttons, and he's like, I've no idea where it came from. He said the worst thing would be if there was a button on the worktop in some spilt milk. That is his ultimate fear. And I think it's just funny, isn't it? How the human mind works and where these things come from. I'm very, very scared of spiders, so I'm not a fan of spiders. So we definitely all have fears. But Ashwin, I just want to thank you so much. It's been a real delight to chat to you. It's been a real delight to come across you in my life. And I would encourage anyone who has not followed Ashwin to go and find him on Instagram. Ashwin, what's your handle? Just do you want to spell it out so everyone can find you?
Yeah, it's at Whacko Chacko, WHACKO,
Great. So, make sure and follow Ashwin. We'll pop links down in the comments below when we publish the video to some of his work and where you can support Ashwin and buy some of his lovely books. As I mentioned earlier, they are all on my wish list, so I will be working my way through them as he writes and publishes them. Ashwin, thank you so much. Keep bringing the joy to the world, keep putting positivity into the internet, because there's a lot of negativity out there, and I really praise you for what you're bringing to the world. So thanks so much, and we'll see you all next time.